Have you ever wondered how a circular argument is different from a discussion that just seems to go round in circles? Have you heard people use the phrase begging the question, but wondered how that's different to just asking a question or not answering it properly? Let's explore circular arguments to find out more. As we learned in our video about deconstructing argument, a valid argument is one where, if all the premises are true, then the conclusion can't be false. Go and check out that video if you haven't seen it already. An example of a valid argument would be Premise 1, the Eiffel Tower is in Paris. Premise 2, Paris is in France. Conclusion, therefore the Eiffel Tower is in France. So what's a circular argument? A circular argument is where one of the premises is or assumes the conclusion. For example, if we were to say Premise 1, Paris is in France. Premise 2, the Eiffel Tower is in France. Conclusion, the Eiffel Tower is in France. That would be a circular argument. An argument where one of the premises is the conclusion doesn't achieve anything. It's like just saying the conclusion is true because the conclusion is true. It's not giving you any reason that you didn't already have for believing in the conclusion. When people make an argument where one of the premises assumes that the conclusion is true, that's called begging the question. That's not the same thing as posing a question, even though some people wrongly use the phrase like that because they don't know what it really means. It's also not the same thing as just not answering the question properly, even though some people also wrongly use the term to mean that. In an example like the one we just saw about the Eiffel Tower, it's easy to see that the argument is circular and meaningless. But often, people use circular arguments in a much more subtle way so that it's less obvious. Let's take an example. Suppose that Jane here were to argue that fairies are real. Suppose that Bob were to ask how Jane knows that fairies are real. Suppose that Jane were to respond, "Only fairies can make the flowers grow." Can you spot how the argument is circular? Jane's statement, "Only fairies can make the flowers grow," only makes sense if we already assume that fairies are real. In other words, you have to assume the very thing that Jane is trying to establish, in this case that fairies are real, to follow her argument about why fairies are real. Most circular arguments are like this. Instead of just stating the conclusion as a premise, which would make it obvious that they're circular, they implicitly require you to assume the conclusion. This makes it trickier to spot, but with your critical thinking skills and what you've learned in this video, you should easily be able to uncover circular arguments even when they're sneaky like this. One place where you'll see a lot of circular arguments is in the field of ethics. So, suppose that Wilbur here were to claim that something is ethical if it makes the most people the happiest. Suppose that Orville here countered by saying, "That can't be right. If slavery made most people the happiest, then your system would say that that's ethical. But slavery is not ethical, and therefore your system is not right." Can you spot the circularity in that argument? Orville's counter-argument already assumes that it's possible to tell whether something is ethical apart from whether it makes the most people the happiest. In other words, his argument already assumes that Wilbur is wrong about what makes something ethical. Yet that's the very thing that his argument is claiming to establish. The fact that Orville is using a very emotive example, one that Wilbur would almost certainly agree is unethical, just serves to obscure the fact that it's a circular argument. But that doesn't make it any less circular. So remember, if an argument doesn't make any sense unless you already assume that the conclusion is true, it doesn't give you any reason to accept its conclusion. Have you come across any examples of circular arguments lately? If so, let us know in the comments. And if you liked this video, check out our other videos on critical thinking and liberal values. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one.